Let's get the show started talking 2022 NFL prediction football. Let's see how we can do, guys. I know I was taking a look at your predictions last year compared to this year. Some are a little similar for all of us. Then we had some changes. So it is what it is. It's the NFL. And even though, I don't know, didn't they have like a streak going on where you would have like a certain number of teams that missed the playoffs one year and made the playoffs the next? I don't know if that stopped or not. But that just shows you there's a lot of parity. Now you have a seventh team in each playoff. So it was tough when you're trying to figure out who are going to be the surprise teams. But Ryan, that's why they're called surprise teams, because you just never know when they're going to get the breaks, when they're going to maybe stay injury free. Maybe they got a good schedule because they were bad the year before, so they're beating up on bad teams. And maybe the time is just right for that team to take off maybe a year earlier than we thought.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the story of the NFL as we enter the season. Probably 10 of the 15 best teams are all in the AFC. So if you're looking for a sleeper team from the AFC, it's hard to find because even the 10th team, you're like, oh, maybe Tennessee's a sleeper team. Well, they were the 1 seed in the playoffs last year. So I don't know that they count as a sleeper team. It's much easier to find a sleeper team in the NFC because the NFC is basically the Rams, the Bucks, the Packers, and anybody else qualifies as a sleeper. So, I think it's a very loaded AFC. 9-8 probably doesn't even get you in the playoffs this year in the AFC, whereas 9-8 could win some divisions, the NFC East in the NFC.
And that's true what Ryan says, Greg, and the fact that if you looked at Vegas right now and you bet who's going to win the Super Bowl, it is the AFC favored by 3 points over the NFC, just on the blind, because they're that deeper.
Taking a look, let's see, I'm just trying to see here what we have with the West, because the West and the AFC West is really where it gets interesting.
I mean, the NFC West is great too. I mean, everybody talks about the AFC West. The NFC West is really good too. The NFC West is really good too. It has 3 playoff teams possibly in the NFC West. Forget East Coast bias. This season is West Coast bias.
Yeah, I think the only difference is that you don't know if can Seattle be a
no, it's
be respectable enough that they don't bring the rest of the division down, while the other 3 teams are all capable of being a Super Bowl contender. Yeah, right. Ryan, you have 3 teams making it in the AFC West. Marc, you do not. You have the Chargers in Kansas City. I have the Chargers, Kansas City, and Raiders. So 20-1, I hear, Marc, if all 4 teams from the AFC West makes the playoffs. I'd put a wager on that, actually. Not a big wager, but I'd throw a few bucks on that.
Well, I wish you'd have called me with that wager first, rather than calling your guy.
No, DraftKings put it out.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's cool.
I read
in
it
that
somewhere.
Sense.
I was like, I don't know when it was. I don't know if it was March or last month, but I saw a story. Yeah.
Well, I think the biggest hurdle you have to overcome is not so much the fact that 4 for 4 has to cash for you, but the fact that they're going to likely tend to beat up on one another.
Could happen. Yeah.
Yeah. And if they do tend to beat up on one another, you could end up with a couple of 9-8 teams, maybe even 3 9-8 teams. Or
don't you think it's possible though that you have to beat each other up in order to get 4 teams? Because if one team is like 1-5 in the division, the chances of them making the playoffs are going to be pretty low.
That's true. If you do just that and you beat each other up, you're going to have to hope, obviously, that the other team's really bottomed out to do just that. I just don't see the 4th place team in the AFC West making the playoffs. And if they do, will that be 9-8 good enough to make the playoffs, as Ryan mentioned earlier?
I think, guys, that it could happen if the rest of if the AFC North wasn't so good, if there weren't 2 good teams in the AFC South, if people didn't think, if the Dolphins were the Dolphins of the last 20 years and not the Dolphins of what they're supposed to be this year. I think you could get 4 in the AFC West in some circumstances, but I think we're selling the rest of the AFC short. I mean, I could make a case for 3 teams from the AFC North to make the playoffs.
Sure. I could do the same thing.
that's why I don't think it's. I think it could be possible in some years gone by. I don't think it's possible this year because the overall depth of the AFC.
Okay, and I agree with that definitely. I don't know about the AFC North strength though. Matter of fact, Mark, you're the only one who put 2 AFC North teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, there's an obvious team missing from my list. The team that was in the Super Bowl last year. I don't have them going to the playoffs this year.
Yeah,
so.
Neither does Ryan.
Oh, really? Okay, good.
I'm the only one that stuck with them.
Okay. My 7 seed was between the Bengals and Titans, and I went with the Titans for the exact reason we've spent the last 5 minutes talking about. They're going to get, I think, 4 cheap wins against the Jaguars and Texans, and Bengals aren't going to get any cheap win. You're counting the Steelers as a cheap win? I'm sorry, I'm not doing
cheap
that.
Win,
so,
but
yeah,
not
yeah.
I
so I'm not. That doesn't compare to playing the Texans and the Jaguars. So that's what, in the end, that's why I went with Tennessee over Cincinnati. One thing we got to talk about too, guys. I'm sure Greg, it's on your list. But as we're talking about the AFC West, I think that's why the playoffs this year are going to go through Buffalo in the AFC, because the AFC West is going to cannibalize each other, and it's going to be very hard to get to 13 wins for that champ. And then, that's why I think the AFC East winner, Buffalo, is going to have home field advantage because they just don't have to cannibalize themselves in the division.
Yeah, we all have Buffalo winning the AFC as far as the number 1 seed. So we do all agree with that. Taking a look at how far we have, you have Buffalo falling short of the championship, Ryan, the AFC championship. Both Mark and I have Buffalo losing the Super Bowl to the same team, the Green Bay Packers. So yeah, you guys
have the same Super Bowl, huh?
Yep, we do.
Okay. All right.
I'm going to tell you this, Ryan, without getting too complex about how I got.
And
to
by
those
the way,
teams
Mark and I also have the same college football championship outcome. So I don't know what that's going to say, Mark.
We're doing too many shows together, Greg. That's what that means.
I mean, the college football one, there's only 3 options. What do you have?
Alabama or Ohio State.
You have Alabama over Georgia or Alabama over Ohio State? Which one?
Ohio State.
Ohio State.
There you go. So that's it. Yeah, I think my 4-year-old could pick the college football 14.
Probably. What were you saying? Before I cut you off?
Well, what I'm saying here is the reason I got to the teams that I got to in the Super Bowl is just this. When I was putting the magazine together, the Playbook Preview Guide, and we have to determine this is going back in April that we have to determine the Super Bowl teams and the playoff teams. And it always comes down to, in my mind, not so much handicapping the teams and the personnel changes and the coaches and so forth and the whatnots. It's isolating the best quarterbacks from each conference, because those are the teams that lead their teams to the playoffs and then the Super Bowl. So hence, when I got to the Buffalo Bills and the Green Bay Packers, I'm settling on the 2 best quarterbacks from each conference. Right.
I just noticed this. Interesting. Who's on the cover? And the color of the Playbook magazine. You did not pick this team to make the playoffs, Mark.
No, because
what's up?
Because Greg, the reason being that cover has become a Sports Illustrated jinx. Okay.
Okay.
I'm telling you,
we get remember, Super Bowl loser.
Well, that's part of the
Super Bowl loser jinx.
Reason, okay.
Yes.
But the cover jinx, Urban Meyer's been on there 2 times in the last 4 years.
Okay.
That speaks well enough all into its own. Right. Last year he was on the cover. We had Joe Paterno on the cover, my goodness, 1 year. So I wasn't afraid about so much the cover jinxes. It was more a determination of which quarterback is going to be very popular with the fans this year when we determined our cover. And he's an up and rising young quarterback, deserving of all the accolades that he got. But, there are reasons behind Joe Burrow that the Cincinnati Bengals, I feel, will not make the playoffs. And we'll get to that when we talk about the AFC, when we break it down in detail.
You did not have Jerry Sandusky, though, on the cover, I hope.
No, I couldn't find a photo anywhere. I looked long and hard and couldn't find a photo.
Thank goodness for that.
Yes,
all right,
really.
Let's make predictions. AFC, we'll talk NFL. And we'll start at the top with those Buffalo Bills in the East. And again, all of us Matter of fact, I think matter of fact, looking through it, Marc, you're the only one who put two teams in the playoffs. You got Miami as a 7 seed. Ryan, you did not believe that Miami was going to make it. Do you have Miami in second place, Ryan?
I do. I think they're the second place team, but I don't, probably ninth in the conference because, like I said, my 7 seed boiled down to Cincinnati and Tennessee. So probably second in the East, but probably 9th or 10th in the conference.
And I had the Dolphins 7th ahead of Tennessee, and I can understand where Ryan's coming in with the Titans. And it's a great point he brings up. Last year, division champions, my goodness. And also, I don't want to beat up on Cincinnati anymore, but remember, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, weren't they only a half a game from being the cellar dweller team in the division last year?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yes.
So Miami, you have them barely making it, Marc. Buffalo, we all have them at the top. Then in the North, taking a look at it, again, I'm loyal with Cincinnati as the 3rd seed. It's the only team I have from the North. Meanwhile, Ryan, you have Baltimore from the North and as a 3 seed, just like I have. And Marc, you have Baltimore winning the North, number 3 seed. And
correct.
You have Cleveland as a 6 seed.
Yeah, Cleveland would be a little bit more of my sleeper type team right now as we speak because of all the Watson situation that's going on in Cleveland. But the bottom line is this team is tremendously talented. They're very, very deep. And I feel if Jacoby Brissett can keep the boat in the water until Watson makes it back behind center again, this team is too talented not to be in the conversation. And, if Watson were here, my goodness, they'd probably be the 3 seed ahead of Baltimore in the AFC. But I believe there's just too much talent on this Cleveland Browns team to dismiss their chances.
Has anybody had a stranger career in the last 6 years than Jacoby Brissett? He steps in. Think about this, guys. Think about the shoes he spilled. He steps in as quarterback when Brady's suspended for Deflategate and Garoppolo's injured. That's when he gets his first taste. So Garoppolo goes down, Brady's out. Then he's the quarterback forced into the starting job when Andrew Luck retires out of nowhere. Now he's the quarterback forced into the starting job by Deshaun Watson's suspension. So, what a wild journey for Jacoby Brissett. I honestly, I gotta disagree with you, Marc. I don't think he can keep it afloat. I think that's a 3-8 team when Watson returns, and so that's why I didn't even really have them in consideration for any of my playoff spots.
Well, it might be a little bias on my part because I'm from Cleveland. I can say that also, but I try not to let that interfere in my handicapping. I'm just really sold on the team that Andrew Berry's put together here, the personnel that he's put together with the team. And I also feel they'll play with a chip on their shoulder here right now because they're being dismissed by everybody.
Well, that's the key right there. From one year to the next, the thing that you always have to look for when you're making predictions is you want teams that are playing for something, like their pride most of all. And a lot of times when you have a decently talented team, pride can really make you that much more effective. And we actually felt that a little bit with our Alabama pick in the college football championship, is that they kind of felt like, they were the best team and the injuries. And that's why this is a good year to take Alabama when they feel like they have something to prove. So Cleveland, the problem, but I kind of agree more with Ryan. Unless they go back to doing and they avoid the injuries that they had last year along the offensive line, they go back and with Hunt, they go back to just ramming the football down your throat with the running game, and the defense also helps them win football games. If they can do that, then I have a lot more confidence that Jacoby Brissett can at least hold the fort.
I say that's check and double check because that's, I think, exactly what they'll do. They'll go to their strength, which is their running game. I think you'll see a lot more of Nick Chubb this year, both running the ball and catching passes out of the backfield. I also feel they're not going to let Jacoby Brissett win or lose football games for them. If that happens offensively, then defensively, they just need to make sure the defense can play up to its ability.
Let me get a word in on the other two teams.
Sure.
The Ravens, I think they were 8-3 last year. They lost their final 6 games. I don't know how many people realize this. I'm sure it's in the playbook, Mark. They lost their final 6. 5 of those 6 were by 3 points or less.
Yep.
So I think just by getting healthy, just by getting Marlon Humphrey and Ronnie Stanley, just by getting healthy with nothing else done, I think they're a playoff team, a Super Bowl contender, just by getting healthy. 8-3, 6 close losses. Give me 11 wins on the Ravens, easy. And one word or less, guys. One word, no more, guys. Is this the year? First time since 2003. Is this the year the Steelers are sub 500? I'll say no. I'll say they get to 9-8.
They haven't named their quarterback yet, have they?
They have not.
But it's looking more and more like Trubisky. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Ryan. I didn't mean to
I think it's Trubisky. What do you guys think? Yes or no?
Who would you go with?
I'd go with Trubisky.
Really? I'd go with Pickett.
Well, Trubisky really, in truth, if you break down his career, has not had a bad career.
Correct.
It was circumstances for him, from the day he was traded, or they traded up to get him, and ended up being the Chicago Bears and yada, yada, and all that stuff. But he's the guy that I think should direct this football team until they're ready to hand the ball over to Pickett. But my answer to you, Ryan, is yes. I think Mike Tomlin suffers his first losing season.
Wow. Greg, over, under 500. What do you got?
If I couldn't pick 500,
you can't. They play 7.
Oh, that's right. Nobody plays 500. They could.
You're not going 8-1. Sorry.
They're famous for playing for a tie.
Yeah, they could do that.
to a tie. Yes.
I'll say over.
You say they get to. You say they have a winning.
Yeah.
No.
They're
losing
actually
record
one of my 3 sleepers, wild card sleepers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think they get to 9-8.
Well, then who's the losing team in the division, you guys? If Pittsburgh is a winning team,
Cleveland.
Great question. For me, it's Cleveland. Yeah.
Yeah. It's again, that's because I believe in Cincinnati. I don't believe in Baltimore as much as you guys, but and look, one of the reasons is you mentioned Stanley. We don't know if Ronnie Stanley's healthy yet. That's still a big if. And if he comes back and if he's healthy, absolutely, he makes such a big difference. But we don't know. As of right now, I don't even think he's going to start week 1 unless they're not telling us something, which is possible. But anyway, he could still come back in October and they'll be fine. Because they're such a well-coached team. They're always going to be competitive. I'm interested to find out also how much this could affect Lamar Jackson, the whole contract thing. Because I don't even know what's going on there. I mean, they haven't re-signed him. So what's going on with Lamar Jackson? Why do you think they have not given him a big contract extension?
Well, they offered him a big contract. He wants a fully guaranteed contract.
Well,
he wants a Deshaun Watson contract, and if not, he's willing to go the Kirk Cousins route of playing for the franchise tag each year.
So, do you agree or disagree with what his position is?
I mean, look, what the Browns did is an outlier. We're not going to see that very often, but I agree with him. I've done more than Deshaun Watson, so if he got it, I should get it. I don't think anybody's going to get it. I don't think it's realistic that that's not going to become the norm, but I could see why he wants to argue it. If I was him, I'd be very careful, though, because he doesn't have an agent in his ear to warn him. The way he plays, the hits he takes would be that's not Kirk Cousins going franchise tag to franchise tag. Lamar Jackson's 20-yard scramble away from being out 15 games, and then the franchise tag is going to be his only option.
And that's the reason they were a losing team last year, is because of Lamar Jackson not being able to play the whole season. You can't overlook the fact that when he's been in the lineup with Baltimore, they are 38-15. Those are outstanding numbers. Amazing. He makes a strong case for himself. Whether you like or dislike the way that he looks as a quarterback throwing the ball, he still wins football games. And I think, as Ryan did, I think they're the number 1 team in that division. And I think, in fact, I know I played them as my top team to go over the season win total this year.
Oh,
what is it?
What's the total?
It was 10 wins.
Okay. Wow. 10 wins. And that's your top team.
Yes.
Wow. It takes a lot of guts to make that your top team. They got to win 11 games.
They got to win 11 games, or what they have to do is not win 9 games. Okay.
Well, okay. All right. So now in the South, it looks once again like it's going to be a tale of two teams. Indianapolis and Tennessee versus Houston and Jacksonville. I think we should all be. I mean, we're all agreed, right, that Jacksonville and Houston will be better.
I don't know if Houston will be better. I can't say that. Jacksonville will be better. They have a coach who's proven to put in the work and proven to be a winner. They have a quarterback we all think is a generational prospect, and they spent $300 million in free agency. So they better be better. But I can't say that Houston will be better.
Well, everybody's fallen in love with Houston based off the preseason and the fact that the team is in love with Lovie Smith.
Oh, God.
And, those are probably the things that would get you in trouble the most as well.
Yeah, I got a bridge to sell you. Yeah,
exactly. They will be the last place team in the division. It may be a moderately improved, but they'll still be the last place team. And I agree with Ryan. I think Jacksonville will indeed be improved. Will they be an 8 or 9 win team? Probably not, but they'll be a lot better than they were last year.
Yeah, I could see them as a 6 or 7 win team.
Yes.
Before we move on, wait, I'm just looking at something here. Yeah, I'm looking at your picks. There's a little bit of a Marc in your picks. Is Indianapolis is the only representative out of the South, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so they have to be a 4 seed at the least. So,
well, then just reverse them
in the Chargers. Okay, so what I was going to say, though, before we move on with anything else, regarding the preseason, and I think we just cut down day was yesterday, and today you're getting all the pickups of the players that were dumped, and you're going to have the practice squad next and so forth. So the teams are never really set for a few more days. I've been doing this long enough now, and so have you guys, that this whole preseason thing, and especially even cut down day, trying to predict it, trying to say, oh, look at when a player looks in the preseason, or forget a team, where even a player looks in the preseason. It doesn't matter. These coaches don't care about preseason performances. Maybe a little bit, okay? Especially a field goal kicker, maybe, but very little. It's like, correct me if I'm wrong, Ryan, but I think they care 90% of what goes on practice compared to preseason games. And that's why it has the general fan bases around this time of year, pulling their hair out, wondering about cuts when they think they see something in preseason games and they think they don't see something. And then all of a sudden players are cut. How'd that guy get cut? They talked this guy up for weeks. It's just, you can't listen to all that garbage. It's just smoke and mirrors. You just have to trust your GM, or you don't trust your GM to make the right pick.
I don't think that the player performance is irrelevant, but I do think it is treated as irrelevant. To me, the guys who flash in the preseason, to me, that's valuable. But coaches, I agree with you. It's 90% practice, 10% games. And GMs is probably more like 50% draft status and contract status, 40% practice, 10% games. Yeah. I think the games matter. Like, I watched the Giants, for example, last year. They couldn't even get a first down the last 6 games of the season playing Jake Fromm and Mike Glennon. They couldn't even get a first down. I watched a shootout with Strevler and Davis Webb in the Jets-Giants game. I'm sorry. To me, those guys, if those guys are Glennon and Fromm are worthy of roster spots, then I can't say that Strevler and Webb aren't worthy of roster spots. But yes, coaches and GMs do not treat it that way. So fan bases should not get wrapped up in it.
The other thing about the preseason, guys, is it's evolving. It's changing. It's not what it was even 5 years ago because, number one, we're down to 3 preseason games, so they're putting talent differently. Third week used to be dress rehearsal week. Last week, we didn't know which teams were dress rehearsal and which ones were not. But the coaches are getting more out of what they call team practices against one another than they are the preseason games themselves. And one of the big reasons they get more out of those team practices against one another is because both the offense and the defense are on the field simultaneously against each other's offense and defense. Right. So there's a lot more to evaluate from the coaches that way in this standpoint. Hence, we don't see preseason results like we expect.
I covered 2 of those this year. I covered Giants, Jets, and Jets, Falcons. And I got to tell you, those are fun to watch. They are very competitive.
Okay, now on the South, Mark, you're the only one with just one team. You have Indianapolis as your 4 seed. Mark and Ryan and I went with Tennessee and Indy. Switched pretty much their spots. I have Tennessee. I'm holding firm to what Tennessee did last year during the regular season is not going away because of their playoff ouster. So I still have them as a top 2 seed. Indy 6. Ryan, you have Indy 4 and Tennessee 7. So let's start with you, Ryan. The difference in Indianapolis and Tennessee, how close is it?
For me, it's probably a game, maybe a game and a tiebreaker. It's close, but Matt Ryan obviously going to Indianapolis is a big upgrade over Carson Wentz. A.J. Brown leaving Tennessee. I mean, they're going to pound Derrick Henry. We know that. I don't know how long till the wheels fall off. This might be the last year. I just think Tennessee's personnel got a little bit worse. And I really like everything about the way Indianapolis runs its organization. And I think they finally have a quarterback they could stick with for 2 or 3 years.
Mark?
I agree with what he says about Tennessee. The big factor here being Derrick Henry healthy for the football season. If he is, they are a playoff team. I don't think it's even arguable. So it remains to be seen how his health fares in that sense. And also, what's in the head of Ryan Tannehill after the way the season ended last year?
Yeah.
Great question.
We're not 100% certain right now at this point. Now, he could be playing with this monster chip. We don't know for sure, but it remains to be seen. There's too many ifs and questions in my mind. Hence, that's the reason I went with what I felt might be the better or the best team in the South, and that was the Indianapolis Colts. Agreeing that Matty Ice is a big upgrade over Carson Wentz. And I'm a big Frank Reich fan. I think he does a real nice job coaching football teams. I don't think he loses games. I think other teams just are better teams that he loses against, if that makes any sense. Hence they got my vote.
If anybody hasn't seen it, anybody listening hasn't seen it, listen to what Ryan Tannehill said in the spring about dealing with the aftermath of that loss and what was going on in his head and kind of the feelings he was having and the kind of I don't mean to minimize depression, but the depression that he sunk into. I mean, I thought it was very enlightening in a world where so much of what we ask and answer is cliches. It was a very revealing, honest take on what it's like to fail as an athlete. And I think it gave you an insight into what is going on in his head. And now what we don't know is how he'll spin it going forward.
Well, it's good to know he cares. That's for sure. That's the way I'd want. As long as, like you said, there's a limit. You want to make sure that with all the depression going on in this country,
healthy.
Yeah, that he's healthy mentally. And I can see why that would be concerning to you too, Mark, because there is an unknown there. But I also am sticking with Tennessee because they're very well coached. And I know the receiving situation, losing Brown is big, but they are a run-first team. I think if anybody can come back from the injury, which he showed last year, even though it was for a game, is Derrick Henry and produce well. I'm a Hassan Haskins kind of fan. I think that he could fill in if he needs to, if they give Derrick a rest or need to. I also think they get an upgrade with Austin Hooper at tight end because they had nothing from the tight end position last year, which really hurt Tannehill, I believe. And the defense, very good secondary. They've improved the secondary immensely. And Jeffrey Simmons up front. One of the most underrated defensive linemen in the game. So I just think it's stability. I know everybody wants to kind of say it's all over. Let's just move on. And Tannehill's going to never get it back. But until that happens, I'm going to stick with them because, again, first and foremost, if they believe in him, and I don't believe drafting Malik Willis has anything to do with him not believing in Tannehill, not when you draft a guy in the 3rd round. So I think they still believe in him. And if they believe in him, then I'm going to believe in him as well.
You hit a key point there, Greg, about Tennessee, and I think it's the defense. And I think that's where they'll make the playoffs is because of their defense. They improved a lot last football season, 6 points a game, 68 yards a game. And in fact, the second half of the football season, they ranked in the top 4 in the league in points allowed. So if they can sustain that defense and then let the offense come around a little bit, the offense really, fell off last year, largely because of the injury and because of the Tannehill situation. But if the defense can hold serve, this football team's got a chance to make the playoffs.
You know, I think their defense is one superior pass rusher away from being top defense in the league. But that's a big miss. Not having that pass rusher. They haven't had that guy for several years. And it's still, I think, maybe the ultimate reason why they can't get over the hump in the playoffs. Okay, AFC West. And we opened with that. Ryan and I have 3 teams in. We all have the Chargers and the Chiefs making it. Ryan has Denver making it. I have the Raiders making it. I had the Raiders making it last year, so I'm sticking with them again this year. Let's talk about Denver and the Raiders first. So, Ryan, your decision to take Denver over the Raiders was as simple as Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I mean, when I've been talking to people around the league for the last 2 years, they've been 3 years now, I guess. They've been telling me, oh, you know who's got a really good team? Denver. They just can't get the quarterback right, but they've got a good young team. Yeah. They've got a really good team. Well, now they have the quarterback. Right. So either everybody was wrong or they're about to take off because they've got the quarterback with the good young team. So for me, yeah, it was really that simple. It was everybody told me they've done a good job assembling talent around the quarterback. Now they have the quarterback.
Question I have to ask is this quarterback a quarterback that's in regression, or a quarterback that is going to come and play spurned and looking to really kick his career off in a winning way with the Denver Broncos? I saw regression from Russell Wilson last year. Now, maybe it was the players that surrounded him, the spat with Pete Carroll, if you will.
Could have been the thumb.
Yeah, and the injury, right. So, everything probably contributed. And, there's a reason Pete Carroll lets Russell Wilson go. They're either not on the same page and Wilson demanded the trade, or Pete Carroll felt like Bill Belichick did about Bernie Kosar, that he was declining, if you will. And we'll see. That's the reason that I left the Denver Broncos office, because I am still not 100% sold on Russell Wilson being the savior.
He's got weapons. And just like he had Lockett and Metcalf. Now he's got Sutton and Judy. So he has the weapons.
And he has and he's got a little bit better offensive line, I think.
Yeah. Yep. So there are no excuses for Russell Wilson. And the defense, good defense. Yes, we're waiting for Bradley Chubb to take that step that he hasn't been able to take yet. They get Randy Gregory, of course. But Pat Surtain, he's every bit as good as everybody thought he could be. And that's also very important for a defense when you can have a corner that can basically take out at one side of the field.
Yep.
Okay, now the top half, Chargers and...
Oh, you didn't do the Raiders.
Oh, yeah, well, with the Raiders, so again, for me, I think it's important that this is the second go-around, Josh McDaniels. I think he's going to be successful this time around. He wasn't a complete failure the first time. It's just that he was given the keys to everything, and that was a mistake. So I think he's going to be much better the second time around. He has a general manager that he can see eye to eye with. So I think they're going to be just fine, especially since they were a playoff team last year. That's the reason why I think that they'll make it again this year. So what do you think, Marc, about Vegas? You had neither team making it. Who did you have in third?
Well, I think it's a toss-up between Denver and the Raiders. I'd probably lean to Denver, if for no other reason, just defensively, and the fact that there is potential, there should be potential there for Russell Wilson. If I'm wrong about that concern, and you also have a Raider team that I'm not 100% completely sold on Derek Carr. I know he puts up decent numbers. Some people even think, I think ludicrously, that they mentioned he could be a Hall of Fame quarterback. I don't see it. I don't know where, and I don't know why.
That's going a little bit too far.
Yeah, I think that's going over the bridge, okay? But because this is the deepest division in all of the National Football League, somebody has to finish last. Somebody does. And it's a coin flip, Denver Broncos, Las Vegas Raiders to me. And the other part is the Las Vegas Raiders do play a tremendous amount of air miles this year. They travel a lot this year as far as air miles are concerned. So hence last place, Las Vegas Raiders.
Hey, Greg, what if you could go back in time, could you be one of my high school or college professors? Because if Josh McDaniels wasn't a complete failure the first time, I'd like to know what a complete failure looks like.
Well, but if you could take
the players hated his guts. His record was terrible. He traded his quarterback. Like, what's a complete failure if it wasn't Josh McDaniels?
Well, you hit a couple of things there. Traded his quarterback. He, like I said, he had way too much authority.
Oh,
that should never have happened. But in my opinion, when you take Tim Tebow led team to the playoffs, I think you're doing something okay for even if it's just a year and win a playoff game with him. So
I got to see it from Josh McDaniels until what is it? A zebra doesn't change its stripes, or a bird doesn't change its feathers. I gotta see him be a more flexible version of himself 10 years later before I believe that the players are going to like him and want to play for him.
Because that's another key thing. Both, if you take a look at it, Denver, they've got and a lot of teams, of course, this season, they got new head coaches. So Nathaniel Hackett, he's never been a head coach before. How much is that going to affect a game or two when you're battling for the final playoff spot? Okay, now the top two teams, the Chargers and the Chiefs. I have the Chiefs over the Chargers. Marc has the Chiefs over the Chargers. Ryan, you're the only one with the Chargers over the Chiefs. So you like the Chargers winning the division.
A little bit of foreshadowing for how far I have the Chargers going. Yes, I do. I look, the NFL, these things aren't perfect, but NFL.com did its list of the top 100 players in the NFL, the player voted list. 8 Chargers. ESPN did its list where it polls people or whatever. 8 Chargers. To me, they have the most individually talented team probably in the whole league right now. They have a great young quarterback who can win a shootout with Mahomes or with Allen if it comes to that. They have pass rush. They have cornerbacks. They've built up the offensive line around Herbert. They've done everything you're supposed to do when you have a good young quarterback. No question. And now they have a coach who's going to make gutsy calls. I mean, basically their season to me is going to come down to a playoff game where Brandon Staley is going to go for it on a 4th and 3 at his own 31. And if he gets it, he's going to win the game and run out the clock. And if he doesn't, he's going to lose. That
was the Cleveland Browns game last year. Is what that was.
That's what's going to happen to them.
That's my concern about this team. Is he over analytical in his approach to as being a head coach in the National Football League? Will he put his team in danger and jeopardy of losing games perhaps they should not have lost?
I like aggressive. I just think, especially in the AFC, and when you're going to be head to head with, we saw it with the Bills Chiefs game last year. There's no room for field goals here, guys. If you're going to beat Mahomes, you're going to beat Allen in Buffalo. You got to get into the analytics. You got to be aggressive. You got to play for touchdowns. That's why I'm going to go with Staley.
All right, a couple of things to watch from the Chargers. Did they improve their run defense enough? They added a couple of free agents. They believe they have. We'll have to see it on the field. Also, they have to keep these players healthy. They've had some injury issues in the past, guys not being able to stay healthy. And already J.C. Jackson's out for a little bit, their prize cornerback pickup. They also have to keep Bryce Callahan healthy. He's had some injury concerns over the past. So that's why we say, even Khalil Mack, that's why we say, especially when it's just such a fine line between all the teams battling in the AFC, if the Chargers go as far as you think they can go, Ryan, they have to have a relatively healthy season for them to do that.
Yeah, I think that's true of anybody, right? The most injured teams never win the Super Bowl. So
okay, now let's wrap up the AFC because we have to talk about the Chiefs as well. Marc, you have the Chiefs making it all the way to the championship game. And you have, again, Buffalo over the Chiefs in the AFC championship game. I have Buffalo over Cincinnati. Ryan has the Chargers over the Chiefs. So he's got the AFC West championship game. So what about the Chiefs, boys? Both of you guys still believe in the Chiefs well enough that they're going to play and lose the AFC Championship game, Marc?
Well, they bring to the table everything that I don't want in a Super Bowl team, and that's a team that does not play solid defense. You can't be mediocre and win Super Bowls, although they did, but I don't think it perpetuates, and I think that's what ends up costing this football team. Last year, Patrick Mahomes had an abysmal season for him, if you will. He didn't look like Patrick Mahomes, especially in the postseason, the playoffs. I heard a couple of interviews with him, and he admits he made a lot of mistakes, and he's going to learn from those mistakes. And if he does, and he ends up being the Patrick Mahomes that we've seen before in the past, they're going to likely be, if not the team to beat, at least the team that can make it to the championship game. And I have to respect that. That's why I have Kansas City winning the West and also playing in the championship game.
Look, I thought they did a lot of things to get younger and faster on defense, yes, which was a need. They got slower on offense just by taking Tyreek Hill out of the mix. But much like we've seen Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, these all-world quarterbacks make their receivers great. So I assume that Marquez Valdez-Scantling and the second-round kid, Sky Moore, I assume they're going to be great receivers because they have Patrick Mahomes throwing to them. So, and they still have Travis Kelce when push comes to shove. I like the team. I just, I like the Chargers. I think the Chargers are a little bit more talented. Basically, I think they're the two teams that are going to survive, and I picked Kansas City. I picked LA over Kansas City because I picked them to win the division, so they're going to be home in the game. So I picked them to win the championship game. But I'm talking razor thin. I could have very easily gone Kansas City over the Chargers.
All right.
So what you're saying, Ryan, here is that we're going to see another Tampa Bay hosting a Super Bowl game, the Chargers hosting a Super Bowl game.
Yeah.
3 straight.
No, wait, isn't the Super Bowl in Arizona this year?
Arizona, actually.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, it was in LA. It was in LA last year. We saw it 2 years in a row, Mark. You're right. We saw it. Tampa Bay hosted it, and then the Rams hosted it last year.
Correct.
And now it'd be Arizona. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you have to see from the Chiefs, you have to see some of those offseason acquisitions. Dunlap, one of the veterans. We'll see if he has anything left in the tank. Karlaftis obviously was the big draft pick. How good can he be? Even Chenal, the kid from Wisconsin, is going to help out in the pass rush on third down passing.
You're missing. They had another first round pick, a cornerback.
McDuffie.
McDuffie.
Yeah. But I was just talking pass rush in general. But yes, they've added a lot of players with most of their picks on defense. Sky Moore being one of their early picks on offense. Okay.
Well, they did get younger this year, as Ryan alluded to it. Even cutting Josh Gordon and going with younger wide receivers
I never
sort of
believed
fits that theme.
Josh Gordon was going to make that. I'm so sick of. Can he just go away, please? Josh Gordon. I mean, what kind of? It's just so ridiculous. Every time he's on a depth chart, it's like, why? It's like, I don't even know. You should just go to the CFL if he wants to play football. All right.
Well, he could hook up with Antonio Brown and the two of them could go. Yes. Okay.
Let's talk about our sleepers in the AFC. So these are wild card sleepers. So I have the Jets as a sleeper and Pittsburgh, as I said. Jets are mostly because of the talent surrounding the quarterback. And then at Super Bowl sleepers, I have Cincinnati, Indianapolis, the Chargers, and Tennessee. Ryan, your wild card sleepers, you also have Pittsburgh. And your Super Bowl sleepers in the AFC, Baltimore, Denver, and obviously the Chargers are on that list because they're at, 14-1 right now, the Chargers? Yes, 14-1. Marc, your wild card sleepers in the AFC, you have Cleveland, and because they were one of your picks to win, to clinch a playoff spot.
To make the playoff, yes.
And your Super Bowl sleeper from the AFC is Baltimore.
I like Baltimore to win the division, hence to make the playoffs and everything we talked about before. If we're talking about another Super Bowl sleeper, I would throw the San Francisco 49ers into it as well.
We'll get to the NFC. Right. Baltimore. You've been kind of simple. You got two teams, one from each conference.
Right.
Ryan and I, we open things up a little bit more. So let's go ahead and talk NFC. So NFC North, we all have the Eagles winning the division as a 4 seed.
NFC East.
And Ryan and I, we all have Dallas as a wild card. I have a 7 seed, Marc has a 7 seed, and Ryan has a 6 seed. So it looks like we all feel the same way about the NFC East, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could flip-flop the top two, though. The Tyron Smith injury, the Dallas's offensive line isn't what it used to be. the Eagles are going for everything. The Eagles tell you is they're going for it. They trade for AJ Brown, going for it. They signed James Bradbury, going for it. The trade they made yesterday for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, going for it. Eagles are going for it. So, and the Cowboys are in regression. I think they're still the top two teams, clear line of demarcation, but to me, the Eagles are going for it. They have a smart GM, and they're still great on both sides of the line, even though they're getting old. And when you're good on both sides of the line in the trenches, you start at 500, and that's kind of where they are.
All right, so I have to ask this question first on Ryan, Marc. The quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, do you believe in Jalen Hurts? Because he is a second-round draft pick.
What's believe in him? Do
you think they could win a Super Bowl with him?
No, absolutely not. No, definitely not. But do I think they can win the division? Yes, I absolutely do. I think they could probably win the division for a while. Would I give him a 5-year, $200 million contract when it's extended? Then no. Why not? That's what he's going to want.
Well, then you can go ahead and ask for it. Well, maybe a bad team will give it to him.
Yeah, but yeah. So I believe in him to win a division. I don't believe in him as their long-term quarterback.
I concur. I was a Jalen Hurts fan at Alabama as a person, okay? As a quarterback, he did all the right things Nick asked. He won games. He led him to national championships. But he's not an all-world quarterback in the National Football League. And it goes back to the question that we open up the show with. What type of teams make it to the Super Bowl? The ones that are led with all-world type quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts does not check that box. I have them winning the East. In fact, Greg, you got to move them up to the 4 seed. I had them as number 6, but
you have to have a division champion in their
yes,
top 4.
But the reason I put them there is I gave them by how I power rated the teams.
Sure.
Okay, not so much the seeds. So, but if the Dallas Cowboys win the division, it would be the first time in Ryan, 18, 20 years that a team has repeated in the NFC East.
03-04, the McNabb teams.
There you go. So if you use that as your basis and you eliminate Dallas, who else is left to pick from? Certainly not the Commanders or the Giants, right?
Got to be Dallas,
right?
Yeah.
So it's got to be the Eagles to win the division, is what it has to be. And they're doing a lot of good things. Sirianni's a real nice young head coach. The players like him. They're playing very well for him. My biggest concern about Philadelphia this year is this: if you look at their schedule and you tear apart their opponents on their schedule this year, they're going to take on opponents that they're going to have the most difficulty with regard to week of rest with opponents coming as scheduling advantages to the opponents. Philadelphia will. Right.
Okay.
Good nugget. That's a good nugget.
Not sure it'll matter in the NFC East, but we'll see. We'll keep an eye on that.
Either of you guys have not the Giants in last place?
Well,
I didn't really even give it that much thought, because once you get past the top 2, I think both teams are going to be. I probably have the Giants in last. Sure.
I would say so also. I mean, not that Washington is that much vastly superior by any means. It's just that the Giants have got to show it. You got to prove something. They got to show something that, they're worthy of gathering a vote somewhere along the way. And I just don't see it. I'm not a big, huge Daniel Jones fan. He looked like a prototypical quarterback coming out of college, but he certainly hasn't been that in the National Football League. And I think the team has problems beyond Daniel Jones as well.
Yeah, he only gets this year, right, Ryan? And that's it. Then they'll look for another quarterback if they're a last place team.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the caveat. Yeah, if they're a last place team, definitely. Yep.
Okay, now in the North, this is where the Packers are, and so if you're taking a look at it, I have the Packers as a 1 seed. That's the only team making it. Ryan, you have the Packers as a 2 seed and Minnesota as a 7 seed. And Marc, you have Green Bay as a 1 seed and Minnesota as a 6 seed. So you both have Minnesota making it as a wild card. I'm just going with one team. Matter of fact, I'm going to go with Detroit finishing in 2nd place. So I don't believe in Minnesota this year. I still think they've got some growing pains with the new staff. But you never know. I understand where you guys are coming from, because the NFC is not as strong. And Kirk Cousins and those receivers and that running game, it could be good enough that could put them over the top in a weaker NFC. But the big question then is, before we get to it, let's also talk about the rest of the division. So is there anything to talk about there with the NFC South? You've got Detroit, and you have Chicago, and you have Minnesota, both of you guys with the Vikings in. So what do you guys think about the other two teams?
Inside of the North Division?
Yeah.
Well, I agree with you. I think Detroit will be an improved football team. I'm not going to go so far as to say they're going to make the playoffs, but I think they will be an improved football team. I think they like playing under Dan Campbell, and I think they're making some nice off-season moves here. The Chicago Bears, I think it's going to be a while before we talk about them in the playoffs. I know Justin Fields, he's going to be the quarterback that's forever evolving in my mind, and I don't know if it's going to happen in Chicago. I really don't.
I'll put it succinctly. The Lions are the NFC's Jaguars, a team that's been awful for a long time that should get to 6 or 7 wins and be third place in their division.
And everybody in Detroit will love it. Go
and the Bears are literally taking the blueprint for building a team around a young quarterback that I think the Chargers have executed beautifully. The Bears are lighting that playbook on fire. They ignored the offensive line. They ignored offensive playmakers. They hired a defensive first coach. They set it on fire. So I think that basically they're going to waste Justin Fields' career.
Yeah, I think a lot depends. He has to stay healthy. That offensive line has been so bad for so long. Can he stay healthy? Can it not damage his confidence? All that kind of stuff. I'm willing to give this new regime an opportunity. We'll see how it goes. So, but yeah, it's not looking good for Chicago. Yeah, and I do think Detroit's going to be improved enough that they're one of my sleeper wildcard teams, but I do not think that they're going to get there. I like what I saw to Jared Goff when they made the changes with the coaching staff last year on offense. He really took off. All points are that he's looking really good again this offseason. That's a big deal when you're talking about as weak as that division can be. And their defense should also be a little bit better and healthier too. So, but as far as the top teams, you guys, again, are both going with Minnesota to make it, and we all have Green Bay. So what about Minnesota? Why did you guys put Minnesota in the playoffs?
Well, I think this football team, first of all, I think all the Kirk Cousins bashings is for all the wrong reasons. If you look at the numbers the guy's put up in his career, they're stellar. They're not just good, they're real good. And he doesn't get any credit for what he's done. He gets credit for maybe the fault of Mike Zimmer as being a head coach. He was not a very good head coach. And I think playing without the restraints of Mike Zimmer being around him will open him up a little bit this football season here. So that being the case, he is a consistent top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. The 90.5 Pro Football Focus passing mark. That's terrific. I'm sort of zeroing and locked in here on Kirk Cousins, but if they can stay healthy, running back position wise, I think this football team can be the second best team in the division.
I mean, if you asked me to name the 5, certainly the 10 best offensive skill position players in the NFL, obviously not quarterbacks. If you asked me for 5, the Vikings might have 2 of the 5. Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson are phenomenal football.
There you go.
And then the defense, I think they improved it. So, and I think they got a slight upgrade to a more modern head coach, more modern thinking head coach. The Vikings lose a lot of close games under Zimmer. So maybe we don't know what O'Connell will do, but I'm thinking maybe that some of that close game, it's not even luck because it would happen too often to be bad luck. I'm seeing some of that close game misexecution maybe turns around with a new management style.
6 games decided on the final play of the game last year for Minnesota, right?
You don't have Mike. You don't have those Mike Zimmer trends anymore, though, to play with, Mark.
No, I don't. But you know something? The truth be known, Greg, they evaporated down the end
last year. Yeah.
Yes, they did. Yeah,
that's why he's gone. Yes,
it is exactly.
So we'll see. It could go either way. Maybe the new coaching staff does help them get over the top, or it could actually say, "Wait a second, maybe Mike Zimmer wasn't so bad. Maybe he had a little bit more structure. Maybe he overcoached this team." So we'll find out this year. Okay, and we all had Green Bay making the Super Bowl. Mark and I had Green Bay winning the Super Bowl, and Ryan, you had Green Bay losing it to your Chargers. But we all have the Green Bay Packers getting over the hump after that game they lost to the 49ers last year in the playoffs was I'm a Packer fan. That would have made me sick for months. They lost the game on special teams. That's how they lost the game, and that's just an ugly way to lose. But that is something they got to go over the hump with, Mark. Or Ryan, go ahead, take it, because that psychologically is an issue.
I got to interrupt. I'm not like best friends with the Packers' former special teams coordinator or anything, but to say they lost the game on special teams, yeah, they had the awful block punt. How about Aaron Rodgers scores more than 3 points in a playoff game? How about that? I mean, like, to me, they lost the game because their offense, their bread and butter, didn't put out in the playoff game. I mean, that's really why they lost the game. I can't kill the Packers special teams. It's supposed to win or lose them games. You survive a block punt if you score 21 points in the playoff game. How about that? Like, to me, I picked your Super Bowl this year was my Super Bowl last year. I had the Packers over the Bills last year, I believe, and I had the Packers over the Browns maybe the year before. I picked the Packers the last 2 years to win the Super Bowl. I have them getting back. I can't put them in. I can't pick them to win it. Like, wake me up on June 10th. The Packers going to win 13 or 14 games. We know that. Like, Aaron Rodgers is going to be an MVP candidate. The receivers are going to get better. This is the best defense Rodgers has played with probably since he won his only Super Bowl in 2010, going back to like Charles Woodson. Like, this is the best defense they've had. They've had a complete team. Wake me up on January 10th, and let's see if the Packers get it done in the playoffs finally.
Well, they're going to need to do just that because they check a lot of boxes, as you mentioned here. If you didn't say Green Bay amongst all those stats that you were spewing out there, you would love the football team you're talking about. Their chances, to make the playoffs, maybe make the Super Bowl, maybe win the Super Bowl. But they haven't done a thing wrong under Matt LaFleur. He's the only coach in NFL history that's won 13 games 3 years in a row. That's not a fluke by any stretch. The big question here is the loss of Davante Adams going to be meaningful with Aaron Rodgers? But I'm, again, with Ryan. I think the quarterback makes the wide receiver. And, much like Patrick Mahomes helped make Tyreek Hill's career. Tyreek Hill's an exceptionally talented athlete, there's no question. But would he have been as talented or met with as much success had it not been Patrick Mahomes? That was his partner? I don't think so. And I think Davante Adams' success, a lot of that was attributed also to Aaron Rodgers. So Aaron Rodgers will make the best of whatever he's got for a receiving core. And this football team, again, best quarterbacks make it to the Super Bowl.
They're kind of like the Yankees, guys, to me. They're kind of like ho-hum, okay, they made the playoffs. Now what? Like, that's kind of how I feel about the Packers. Like, the regular season's like kind of a boring waste of time. You're going to be the 1 or a 2 seed. Show me you can win in the playoffs. I'm tired of the Packers. They've lost 4 or 5 straight appearances in the NFC Championship game. Get back over the hump.
If you would have told Aaron Rodgers going into that San Francisco playoff game that they were going to hold the 49ers to 13 points and 212 yards of offense, would you have liked your chances?
He would have said, I'm not even playing in the fourth quarter. He would have said, we're winning 35-13. I'm on the bench in the fourth quarter.
There you go.
Yeah, I think it's if the Packers get over the hump, make the Super Bowl, they're going to win it. I'm going to be most nervous, even in that first playoff game, whoever they play. That there's a thing hanging over with this new coach that they just can't win that key playoff game. And if they can get through that, when a couple of playoff games get to the Super Bowl, I think they'll be untouchable when they get there. Okay.
I would say back to the Vikings for a quick sec. There are probably 4 teams in the AFC that I did not put in the playoffs that I would have made the 7 seed in the NFC over the Vikings. The Dolphins, the Bengals, the Raiders, and probably the Steelers.
Pittsburgh?
Yeah, the Steelers. I probably would have put all 4 of those teams in over the Vikings.
All right. South. 1 team and 1 team only. Tampa Bay. I have a 2 seed. Marc has a 3 seed, and Ryan, you have them as a 1 seed. So speaking of, just call me when the postseason comes. I mean, that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but you also know that, I mean, they understand if they're going to get back to the Super Bowl, that they really can use home field advantage. I mean, just even going back to Tom Brady's days with the Patriots, they stood a much better chance of getting to the Super Bowl when they had home field advantage. So it is important for Tampa Bay to try and make sure. And with that division, with those games they have in a division, it shouldn't be very hard for them to be a pretty high seed. Marc, you seem to think a little less of Tampa Bay than we do.
I do, and my concern is the off-the-field goings-on with the GOAT, and what is exactly going on with him. And it didn't just start this preseason; it started at the end of last season, when he was being wooed by Stephen Ross and the Miami Dolphins, and strongly considered either coming in as management or a quarterback or part owner. And it goes into preseason, and he retires. Then he goes to preseason, and he unretires, and then he takes a hiatus during preseason. Does the man want to play? That's my question. And I'm afraid at 45 years of age, sooner or later, and it's probably going to be sooner than sooner, that things are going to ultimately end up catching up with him. And they're a one-man pony right now with Tom Brady here. And I'm afraid if something happens to Tom Brady where he's not at his very, very best, this team will suffer.
Say, Ryan, if Tampa Bay does not win let's say Tom Brady gets hurt for the year, and they got nothing, they can't win anything without him, who would you have? Who's in second place?
The Saints.
You agree with that, Marc?
I agree with that. I think there's something happening here that we're about to see this season. We're going to maybe find out why Jamison Winston was drafted as highly as he was coming out of Florida State. I know he's a riverboat gambler when he's back in the pocket and he throws passes where he shouldn't be throwing passes, but he's really prolific when it comes to delivering yards and touchdown passes. And having a year off to maybe observe a little bit more, I think will help him, help his maturity, and I think they could indeed be that second place team in the division.
I like what you're saying. If it was last year, Marc, if it was still in Sean Payton's offense, that's exactly how I felt about him last year. I don't know that Dennis Allen is going to allow him to show what you're saying he's going to show. But
that's my biggest concern as well, is Dennis Allen. Go ahead.
I still think they're the second best team in the division because I just don't think the division's very good. I think the Panthers will start like a house on fire because Baker Mayfield will want to beat the Browns.
Last year.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield's going to come out and throw 5 touchdowns against the Browns. It's going to happen. That's who he is. He's going to play out of his mind, and then he'll come back to earth. And then I think the Falcons are the worst roster in the NFL. Pound for pound, add it all up, I think they have the worst roster in the NFL. I think they're my pick for for most likely to have the number 1 pick in next year's draft. So to me, it's Saints by default.
By the way, both you guys have Carolina as NFC wildcard sleepers. So just keep that in mind.
Well, I like that defense there, Greg. The defense last year was highly overlooked in that 5-win season they had last year. Only 306 yards a game. They were a top 10 ranked defense overall. No McCaffrey and in the backfield here really strangled the offense. Yeah, he comes back healthy. Mayfield gives them a spark. If the defense can be anything what they were close to last year, I think that makes them a sleeper.
Yeah, I just talking to Carolina. I have a Carolina analyst, does a great job. We have their channel link on our show, and they're just so confused and upset with the owner and the way that the team is run. And it's one of those things where you can see, like you said, maybe Carolina, everything goes well, they make the playoffs, and they've kind of got life again with Matt Rule. But if they don't make the playoffs and they win like 6 games, they're starting over. I don't think Matt Rule's coming back.
I think Matt Rule is on a hot seat. Would you agree with that, Ryan?
Oh, absolutely. I think he has probably him and McCarthy probably have the 2 hottest seats as the season gets going.
And as far as as you mentioned with
the difference is McCarthy has nowhere to go if he gets fired. We know what's going to happen in September. 2 college football Power 5 teams are going to get fired, and Matt Rule's going to throw his hat into the ring to be the head coach of that team.
Yeah, he'll be back in college, no question, if that happens. Yeah, and I kind of disagree with Atlanta. I think that they're not going to be as bad. I think they're not going to be good, but I don't know if they're going to be like anything close to like historically bad.
Right now, we have one division to go, but right now, and it's not going to be any team in that division. So right now, who do you got? If it's not Atlanta, who's your pick for number one pick in the 2023 NFL draft? Chicago, Marc?
Yeah, maybe even the Giants, possible.
Or maybe
Houston's still a possibility, of course.
Pick one.
I would say Chicago, maybe.
I'm going to say Atlanta, the Falcons.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay. By the way, do you believe that they should stick with Ritter and go ahead and say draft Anderson with the first pick in the draft if they get the first pick next year? Or should they, or do you think they should just go right after the quarterback with the first pick?
I mean, if the quarterbacks are going to be 2 and 3, they play to that level. They're going to be 2 and 3. Then they should take the quarterback. You can't let Desmond Ritter stop you from getting a generational quarterback. No. Now, if the quarterbacks struggle and we're talking they're in the Kenny Pickett range, then no, you don't reach. But if they're going to be 2 and 3, then you should take them at 1.
Well, and that's why we're going to see Ritter. We're going to see him this year, and we're going to have an idea of whether or not everybody believes he's good enough to be a good, competent starter. So, okay, and then in the West, I'm the only one with 3 teams. I have L.A., Arizona, San Francisco. L.A. a 3 seed. Ryan, you have L.A. a 3 seed, Arizona a 5 seed. And Marc, you have LA a 2 seed, San Francisco a 5 seed. So we're kind of all over the place here, which is not a surprise because it's going to be a very competitive top 3. So let's go with why, Marc, did you take San Francisco over Arizona?
Well, first of all, I'm not a huge Kyler Murray fan. I know he's got a lot of ability, but he's got a little bit of a Baker Mayfield thing working for him. He's really under the limbo stick as far as a prototype quarterback. He's too short. He's 5'10" tall, and he doesn't stay in the pocket. He looks to either throw a 90 or 105 mile an hour fastball or run the football. I don't think those are the qualities you're looking for in a quarterback to win in a tough division here. San Francisco, to me, is a very well-coached team. I really, really like Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. I like what he did with Deebo Samuel and made him into the player that he is right now. And he does one thing, guys, that has been really, really successful as far as handicapping in the National Football League is concerned. And what that is simply that when you are in amongst the top 1 or 2 or 3 teams in the league that leads the league in rushing attempts per game, you are always a good point spread team. And it only bodes well. You're controlling the clock. You're controlling the play. You're beating up on the other team's defense. And he does all of those things. Now, my biggest concern about him this year is Trey Lance. I'm not sold on Trey Lance. And was I surprised when they re-signed Jimmy Garoppolo? No, I was not, because Jimmy Garoppolo has done nothing but win. And if the kid is healthy, I could see him being the quarterback in their playoff game this football season here. So hence, San Francisco is my second team in the West.
Ryan?
My pick was
in Arizona more.
My pick was more anti-San Francisco than pro Arizona, to be honest. Yeah. Look, I know what I said earlier about teams with talent and teams with good on the line. And look, San Francisco has a lot of top talent. I mean, Fred Warner, Trent Williams, Deebo, these are all guys who are like, top 5 at their position across the league. But what San Francisco did was it's a copycat league, and they're trying to be the next Kansas City. They drafted their young quarterback who they believed in, who's a off-schedule thrower. They developed him for a year. Then they handed him the job, and they're trying to recreate Patrick Mahomes. Here's the problem. Trey Lance isn't Patrick Mahomes. And the Chiefs traded Alex Smith. The 49ers kept Jimmy Garoppolo. To me, this is a formula for a disastrous locker room. Shanahan better have a complete control over this locker room because it's a formula for disaster. You already saw the players were already fighting on Twitter with reporters about stuff. Like, to me, this locker room better be behind Trey Lance, because otherwise you're going to have a lot of really good players in their prime who are like, wait a minute, we're not competing for a Super Bowl because we're playing this guy when we know we can. We had a 4th we had a 10-point fourth quarter lead in the NFC Championship game with that guy, and he's on the bench, and we're going to win 7 games with this guy. Like, to me, it's a formula for disaster to have Garoppolo looking over his shoulder. So I just don't see Trey Lance as ready to take that Mahomes next step. And look, if he is, then the Niners are going to be a dynasty. That's what's going to happen. They've done everything to be a dynasty if the quarterback's good enough. I just don't think he is.
What do you see the reason for San Francisco re-signing Jimmy Garoppolo?
A couple things. Well, they didn't re-sign him. They just didn't.
They didn't cut him. Yes.
A couple things. One is the exact reason I just said, which is if Lance isn't ready, they want to have a security blanket so they don't waste the season. Basically, they don't throw away a season with all these really good players. If they're 3-5 and they need Jimmy to save the season, then they do that, which ruins Trey Lance's confidence. And 2, they knew that if they cut him, he was going to end up in Seattle, and they didn't want to see him twice a year in their own division.
That's a good point. Good point.
Big thing to keep an eye on, though, with San Francisco, especially when you have a rookie running back, a quarterback that runs a lot. They do not have a good offensive line out. They have a really elite left tackle. They've got a right tackle that is really good, but needs to stay healthy. And their interior of the offensive line is a major question mark. So that is a big issue for San Francisco. It's been an issue for them all offseason. I don't think it goes away automatically. That is the part that I would keep an eye on first and foremost. Okay, so and Seattle, what do you guys think? You think Geno can resurrect his career and be the 17-game starter?
No, you're looking at a 4-13 team.
Mark?
Yeah, I think they were the team that I would have voted second with Atlanta to be the worst team in the league this year. Flip them, Seattle or Atlanta out of the NFC.
All right, in L.A., taking a look at how far you guys have the Rams getting back. None of us, of course, have them getting back to the Super Bowl. And really, what do you think about the Rams and a possibility of them getting back? And
anybody have them in the NFC Championship game?
No.
I think they got worse. They lost Sebastian Joseph Day, who helped their run defense. They lost Odell and Von Miller, who were like kind of hired guns who put them over the top. Matthew Stafford really didn't have a great regular season. He had an Eli Manning-like jump in the postseason. I know from covering Eli that doesn't necessarily carry over from postseason to a regular season. So, I mean, I think they're a good team. I think they'll win a tough division, but I don't think they're a Super Bowl team.
By the way, this is also a team that has to look at their offensive line because Whitworth's gone now. Yeah. They've got some questions on the offensive line as well. Mark?
The one thing about the Rams this year not getting a lot of accolades from us anyway, or from me in particular, is we talked about Super Bowl losers and how they really disappear the next football season here. Well, Super Bowl winners do just the same thing. They haven't repeated in 18 years, a Super Bowl winner. That's going to be very, very difficult for a team like this to do in playing in a pretty tough division that they happen to play in. And they're also what I call a lopsided football team. And when I say lopsided, I mean that they've got some very, very talented players, and they've got some very, very marginal players. And the reason the marginal players are on that roster is because they give all the money to the superstars, and they sign the other players for minimum wage or just a little bit over. So that's that imbalance, if you will. And if any of these superstar players ends up hurting themselves or are out of the lineup, if they become an Odell Beckham Jr. throughout the course of the whole football season, that could be disastrous.
I totally agree with what you said. You call it lopsided. I call it top heavy, but that's
there you go.
Yep. That's exactly what they are.
They also can't seem to keep both Henderson and Akers healthy, so that could come into play. We'll see if Bobby Wagner can, infuse some, hey, I want to win a Super Bowl in that locker room.
And there's been nothing but great reports about Allen Robinson, who's another guy who could revive his career in LA.
Oh, and do you guys think Aaron Donald should be suspended by the Rams?
For preseason for his actions?
Not like for a regular season game. Correct.
Because of the helmet swing?
Yes.
Suspended by the Rams or by the league?
Because, the NFL can't suspend him.
Then no.
Well, they'll never do that. If it's up to the Rams alone, they'll never do that. he's their air freight carrier.
Let me say that. All right. So if that was Greg Gaines, should they have suspended him?
Probably.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about. Let's just go over the sleepers now, and in the NFC, our wild card sleepers. Again, I talked about Detroit. That's it for me. Super Bowl sleepers, Philadelphia. That's it for me. Ryan, you have wild card sleeper Washington. Washington.
I do.
Why?
I asked you guys who you thought.
Yeah, I know. We didn't go. We didn't. Yeah. That's why you were asking us.
Yeah. Look, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. But as I said before, I'm not sold on the Vikings. The Vikings are my 7 seed by default.
Sure.
So as I was going through it, New Orleans is possible. And I was like, you know what? I guess Washington. I mean, I think they're more than anything. I just think they're clearly better than the Giants. So to me, they're the definite third team. So to me, a third place team is probably in the mix for the 7th seed. That's really as simple as it was. I don't have any thought that they're going to finish last. The Giants are going to finish last. So if they're in third place, I figure they're in the mix.
Ryan, I've got 2 words to that. Carson Wentz.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty decent backup.
But what is Carson Wentz? He's a 500 quarter. He's not an implosion. I mean,
no, he's not.
The Colts were what, 9-8, and they were right on the cusp of the playoffs last year. The Eagles were always in the mix with Carson Wentz.
Yeah, it is surprising how much people trash Carson Wentz now, like he's like a 5-50 quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. He's not what he was supposed to be when he was going to be an MVP candidate, but he's not incapable of winning games. Yeah, I mean,
he has limitations, but he's not.
Washington will probably be 7-10, 8-9. So if a game or 2 flips the other way, they're a wild card sleeper.
Super Bowl sleepers, you have Arizona from the NFC. Marc, your wild card sleeper in the NFC is Carolina. Wild card sleeper Carolina, and your Super Bowl sleeper San Francisco. So that's your sleeper to win the Super Bowl. And again, our picks, I have Buffalo over the Bengals, Green Bay over Tampa Bay, with the Packers over the Bills. Ryan, you have the Chargers over the Chiefs, the Packers over the Bucks, and the Chargers over the Packers. Marc, you have the, AFC, you have Buffalo over Kansas City, NFC, Green Bay over San Francisco, and in the Super Bowl, Green Bay over Buffalo. So with all the doubt on San Francisco, you've taken them all the way to the NFC Championship game, Marc.
Well, I'm probably too much in love with Kyle Shanahan, and he's beginning to build his own little tree, if you will. He comes out of his father's tree, and now Mike McDaniel from Miami down here. He comes from the Shanahan family and doing things like that. So, they're going to copy, as Ryan said, copy success. San Francisco has been successful, so until they're not, I've got to keep them in the mention.
And here's that 30th anniversary playbook. All right, if you haven't bought it yet, what are you waiting for? Season starts a week from tomorrow on a Thursday night, so it's still not too late to order the playbook magazine at playbooksports.com. Marc, appreciate it as always. We'll actually be doing our regular season show on Thursdays.
Thursday sounds like the day to me. Yes.
Oh, are we coming up with that right now, or?
I'm just confirming it if it was before.
I don't even remember either. So
I don't either. But Thursday sounds good.
All right, but we are going to be on the air again tomorrow when we do our weekly show. That is going to be taking a look at Week 1 in college football. So that will be on the air tomorrow, and of course on the channel. Ryan, appreciate it. We'll be talking at some point in September. I'm not sure when, but there'll be enough stories in the NFL and college. Well, maybe not Rutgers, but there'll be enough stories in the NFL for me to pick your brain.
Sounds good. I'll be listening to you two guys.
Thanks.
Hey, Brian, I really enjoy working with you, man. You do a terrific job, and I can tell you the confirmation of that is as you speak, I'm writing notes, okay?
Oh.
I appreciate that. I do the same when you guys talk. So
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good season. Thank you. Bye-bye.